I'm just going to do it and just...
I would never try to sing.
Good morning, everyone. How are you this morning?
Great.
It's kind of early, but let me just take you through what my take on neighborhood community revitalization is. We've talked a lot about what's happened. We've talked about the various projects, et cetera, but to me, it's the relationships, it's the partnerships that make sense. And as I thought through what that meant to me and how we got to where we needed to go, there were a lot of people who probably should be up here on the stage that aren't, and there are some key people and key moments that I thought I'd bring to your attention to put things in context. The mayor did not talk about the state of the Housing Authority when he first became mayor. It was crumbling, and he did some instrumental things. He became the chairman of the Housing Authority for the city of Pittsburgh. And in addition to becoming chairman for the Housing Authority of the city of Pittsburgh, he went out and got McKinsey & Company to work along with the Housing Authority to think about how we could restructure it. He had several meetings with Henry Cisneros to think about how we build partnerships. And back in those days, Hope 6 was early, and we were able to get 5 or 6 Hope 6 deals in the city of Pittsburgh. When you go out to East Liberty, it's hard to talk about development in East Liberty without talking about Maylene Myers and the revitalization that's going on out there. There's a partner that's no longer with us by the name of Mark Snyder, and Mark Snyder was chairman of the Stadium Authority, and the work he did with respect to the ballparks. Steve Leeper, I just got to take a minute. He is one, if you ever go to Cincinnati, look at the good work he's doing in Cincinnati. Steve Leeper is very special to me because he's the one that got it right. How can you have a plan without financing it? He looked at the programs over here, and he looked at the financing over here, and he had the ability to merge both of them almost seamlessly, no matter what projects he were working on. One of my mentors, Betty Jane Ralph, was one of the first Linsky advocates that were in the neighborhoods who talked about how people mattered. Aggie Bro stepped up to the plate. She's with Bloomfield Garfield, and in Bloomfield Garfield, she had the capacity to understand that we needed a new way to talk to financial institutions and tell these financial institutions that we want equal lending patterns and practices, and at the same time, we will never ask you to do a bad deal. There's a guy in town called Arthur Ziegler. Many of you probably have met him. He is considered one of the national preservationists, and he helped me understand how we can restore historic neighborhoods and rebuild from the rebuild the fabric back into the neighborhood. As we continue to move on, you have to understand, in my point of view, the strongest public partnerships are the ones you see in front of you. The Pittsburgh Foundations, they play a huge role in leveraging assets and resources. And I also say they play a huge role because they know who's real and who's fake. They've been around a long time, and they have the ability to know who is really making stuff happen out there. Just a brief minute on this organization called the Pittsburgh Community Reinvestment Group. About 20 years ago, myself, funded by Pittsburgh History and Landmarks Foundation and Aggie Bros, we came up with this nominal idea. What would happen if you put 32 community-based organizations together in a room and said, we want to have one discussion, 32 community-based organizations, one discussion with financial institutions about lending practice and patterns throughout the city of Pittsburgh. And they engaged us in that discussion. It was rocky at first, but all of the Pittsburgh financial institutions agreed to be engaged in that discussion. And there's been over $1 billion of leverage between public and private resources that's going back into Pittsburgh's neighborhood. I can't say enough about the Housing Authority of the city of Pittsburgh. Why? Because my first day on the job, I was standing in front of the Common Pleas Court judge, and he was looking at me saying, do I take it over, or do you still want it? And my answer was, I've never run a housing authority, but give me a chance. And when the mayor stepped up to the plate, when he left, he put Herb Elledge, who was the former chairman and former president of Weird and Steel, on the board to replace him. We had a number of good things happen there. We can't say enough about the Urban Redevelopment Authority of the city of Pittsburgh. I doubt very seriously if there's one like it anywhere in America. The Urban Redevelopment Authority, from the days of David Lawrence, has leveraged billions of dollars here in the city of Pittsburgh and Allegheny County region. When we talk about public-private financing, it's key. What good is it to have a well-defined plan if you can't finance it? Many cities I've traveled to, I've asked them to think about, okay, you got a neighborhood plan? You got a community plan? What's the financial aspects of the plan? Well, we're still working on that. When we did our Hope 6 development, millions raised and spent. Washington's Landing, millions raised and spent. Historic preservation, millions raised and spent throughout the Pittsburgh neighborhoods. And those millions of dollars that were raised and spent were spent wisely in the various neighborhoods. And I felt very proud of that. Now, was everything a bed of roses? No, it wasn't. lest we forget the difficulties. It wasn't all wine and roses. When we took over the Housing Authority, 30% of the African Americans lived in subsidized housing in the city of Pittsburgh. 1 out of 3 African Americans, 1 out of 3 poor people lived in subsidized housing in the city of Pittsburgh. People don't remember Johnny Gamish. That took up at least a year of us examining what race meant in this city. Johnny Gamish is a football player. The Justice Department had a court order on how we ran our police department. And that was a very tough decision for the mayor to make. He consulted with a lot of people with respect to what was going on. Redlining happened here, as it happened in a lot of cities across America. African Americans were not able to reinvest to get loans in neighborhoods that they should have gotten loans in. I can tell you, it's a fait accompli today. We talk about reinvesting in neighborhoods. It was not always that way. There were neighborhoods in which financial institutions would not invest. I can tell you today in Pittsburgh, whether it's PNC Bank, whether it's Mellon, whether it's Dollar, and I'm going to forget many of those, they all now understand the importance of being engaged in our neighborhoods, and they stepped up to the plate, and they continue to re-engage in neighborhoods. I've got to just tell you a quick story about a bank in the mayor's leadership. Very few people know this. I worked for this guy. I remember one day when he was building the ballparks. There was a bank that's out of business, I can say the name now, Integra, and they wanted to be engaged in helping finance the stadiums. And I couldn't believe it. They come in, they're having a conversation with the mayor, and he said, no, you can't be in this deal. You're not actively engaged in being in the neighborhoods. That gave potency to the reinvestment strategies in our neighborhoods. When leadership steps up and say, put your money where your mouth is, we're all in this together, it really works. Thank you.